hi everyone, and welcome to another special edition of VLGA Connect. And I'm joined by the CEO of the VLGA for this one, Kathryn Arndt. Hi, Kathryn.
Hi, Chris. How are you today?
Going very well, thank you, and welcome. Good to see you as always. And we're really pleased today to have with us the new Chief Municipal Inspector with the Local Government Inspectorate in Victoria, Michael Stefanovic. Michael, welcome to VLGA Connect.
Thank you very much, Chris, and good morning to you and Kathryn. Thanks very much for putting this on for me today. Thank you.
You're very welcome. We like to use the program to introduce people such as yourself who are reasonably new to the sector in Victoria and to talk a bit about your role and your approach to the role. And I know we didn't choreograph this, Kathryn, but I'm going to give you the honour of question number one.
Thank you, Chris, and welcome, Michael. The VLGA is really pleased to have you on the program today. And really, it's just an opportunity for you to introduce yourself to the sector. I'm sure you've already got around, whether it be virtually or perhaps some face-to-face before this latest lockdown, but to tell us a little bit about your background, what you're hoping to bring to the role, and I guess some of your early observations of the local government sector here in Victoria.
Thanks again for having me here and giving me this opportunity. Look, I'd like to say that I am actually very new to the local government sector. Up until very recently, I was like any other ratepayer. My new councils did a lot, but only in my new role have I really started to appreciate how complex the challenges are that councils face. But my background, I came out of law enforcement. I was with Victoria Police for just under 15 years with the crime squads. I was at the homicide squad for 5 years. I then left to go overseas to the War Crimes Tribunal, and that sort of started me on a path of about 15 plus years in and out of international organisations, the UN and the World Bank in different roles, always in the investigations. I spent time at the World Bank, which in Washington, which is probably where I first came to learn how to adjust to new sectors, things that I had no awareness of. So, for example, 1 week my teams might be investigating a highway project in Nigeria, and the next week my Southeast Asia team is looking at a microfinancing project down in Southeast Asia somewhere, and areas I knew nothing about, and I had to sort of try and come up to speed with this as quickly as I possibly could. I find myself with that steep learning curve right now with local government.
I'm going to ask that question, Michael, given that background, and that's, they're pretty significant roles that you've had. What's attracted you to this role with local government in Victoria?
It is, I'm glad I left the police. I enjoyed my time with the police, but having been out and around the world, I've seen different ways things operate and get a greater appreciation of how my law enforcement background sort of can be used in so many different ways, in so many different sectors. And certainly the World Bank, as I said, gave me that first exposure. And it really opened my eyes to working in multidisciplinary teams where, for any given project, you can't just have, your run-of-the-mill detective looking at it. You need a mixture of, if it's a highway project, for example, you'll need certainly investigators from different backgrounds, but you'll need highway engineers. You'll need understanding how supervising engineers work on those projects. You'll have to understand how the financing works at national, state and local levels. It's procurement processes, environmental processes, things that, homicide detectives don't tend to turn their minds to. So it's just, again, and having seen that and then seeing the opportunity with local government, I think it's like what I saw at the World Bank is a bigger version of what local governments do. And so I think that's where it's, local governments have got, heavy responsibilities in all of those areas. And when things go wrong locally, it's the council that people turn to in the first instance to get, some sort of sense of whether or not they're going to get resolution to the problem they face. So I think it's, out of that background, I think that has drawn me to this role. And as I said, on arrival, I've been, very, very happy with the depth of the team that I have at the LGI. I have a number of my staff that have been there since the outset, and I lean on them a lot in my first 7 weeks for their expertise. and their networks. They're just amazing networks. They know pretty much everyone in local government, past and present, and I make the most of them. The other things in terms of observations in the first 7 weeks, I've really come to see how we sort of sit in a key role in the integrity system in Victoria, particularly our relationships with the Ombudsman's Office and also IBAC. And I say we're sort of positioned somewhere in between in terms of the nature of the things we look at. And in my address to the Integrity Oversight Committee of Parliament yesterday, I sort of made the observation that the work that we do at the Local Government Inspectorate can essentially help to head off problems before they rise to the level that might go to necessitate an IBAC investigation.
Michael, sorry to jump in there. If we can just explore that a little bit further, and certainly even picking up your, taking us through your journey of your background. And I guess what you're describing here, looking at your background and the work that you've done, and also the role of the inspectorate is exactly that. It is an inspectorate. But I wonder, when we think about those other integrity agencies and also the role of the inspectorate, where do you see the work of the inspectorate perhaps also going into that education and guidance area in the local government sector?
I think it's all well and good to do investigations and detect breaches and things, but to what end? Like if they're not packaged up and exploited for the learning opportunities, then that's a real failing of the system. Now, whereas we're a small office, we have 16 people, but fortunately, with the nature of the work, there's often lots of opportunity with the Ombudsman's Office, with IBAC, and with their significant capabilities in the area of education, prevention, and outreach. So we get invited to participate in many of their events and give the local government inspectorate perspective on those matters that cut across the various integrity agencies.
Michael, in terms of where your early focus in the role is going to be, I noticed a new newsletter's come out from your office in the last week or so with some interesting stats about the election, particularly the number of complaints from last year. Is that informing a lot of what you're doing right now, following up on those issues?
Yeah, at the moment with the election, as you know, they come around every 4 years. Now, for us, that means that our workload goes up tremendously in that small window during the period that the election is live. Now, so we typically run around 400 to 500 complaints a year. During the most recent election, we received about 800 plus election-related complaints. So in the span of about 7 weeks, the numbers on our books tripled. So many of those things are matters that really didn't rise to the level of an investigation. The vast majority of those that way inclined. Some do. One of the things that I've come into it afterwards, so I can sort of see how officers process it. But one of the things that I've noticed, and it gets to where I'm taking the office in the short term, is the way in which we deal with our complainants. Like any integrity body. The complainants are the lifeblood of the office. Now, at the moment, we have a case management system that really is outdated. It doesn't give the complainants or us the ability to track something through from life cycle. So what I'd like to have is a case management system that allows the complainant to enter their complaint online. There's milestones that are built into it so that we, at our office, are required to go back to the complainants to tell them certain things in terms of the progress of their matter through the system. And it also gives us the ability to have that information put directly into our investigation system. At the moment, we don't have that. It also limits the amount of, in past lives, investigative roles, before I'd send my teams off around the world to do investigations, I'd ask them, what do we already know? What have we learned from prior cases? What have we already got in the system? Now, with the LGI, our system doesn't really enable us to look at trends over time because this system is so old, and now we've moved across from Department of Premier and Cabinet. We're now over at Justice. It's pretty clear that this system has to be replaced. So I'll be doing that in the very short term. But
we're talking about an IT system there, aren't we? A case management system that's has a technology solution.
Yeah, it is, but it's sort of fundamental to a lot of things. Like any agency, that deals with consumers of one sort or another, or complainants, has to be able to sort of track those complaints properly, make sure it's user friendly for the people that come to you. It's also user friendly internally, and also like for basic reporting. We really struggle at the moment. If we were to be asked questions about volumes of cases in any given time, or particular style of cases that we look, or complaints, that involves one person sitting down with a spreadsheet for a lot of time, a lengthy period of time to compile that. As modern systems now have dashboards that enable you to do that much more effectively.
Michael, if we just go back to the recent election, and I know that you've come in after that, are you able to tell us a little bit about the themes, I guess? And you mentioned that there were some of the complaints that came in that I guess didn't require further scrutiny or investigation. Are you able to share any sort of observations about why that might have been the case?
Often it's a misunderstanding. Like that the complainants don't understand that candidates are allowed to sometimes say things that they may perceive as outlandish. It's robust electioneering. There's case law on it that candidates will often push the envelope. So it's very hard for the person on the street to understand where the line exists as to what's appropriate and what's not. So sometimes we help to explain that. Other times too, candidates might use information. They might sort of use council data or statistics, and they might misrepresent it. They might put the wrong numbers in. They may do it deliberately. They may do it accidentally. So sometimes when those things occur, even though there's councils have got to be very careful about what they do in that period of the election in terms of they don't want to be seen to be interfering in the election process. It's okay for councils to actually correct errors in data used by candidates. So a number of times we've had to go back to council and say, no, that's okay. You are entitled to correct the record. So there's a lot of that occurs. Other things that may well be, they're matters that involve the Electoral Commission. They're things that the Electoral Commission can deal with, such as advertising, banners, and presence of people within X meters of polling places and those sorts of things that they deal with under the electoral. They're not matters that we deal with. Yeah. So at the end of that, we get a lot of cases, and it's typically about 30 to 40 cases a day, or complaints a day during the election period. The vast majority of them are things that are dealt with by explanation of the processes, referral to the Electoral Commission or to others. Very few ultimately result in a full-on investigation, and we're still going through that sort of process now to assess the ones that we think may rise to that. But I'll just give you a bit of a flavour too. One of the other things that came out is the role of social media and the way in which it's sort of been weaponised, not just in local government but around the world, to make points or to detract from the points that others are making. So it's clearly played a role in the local government elections as well.
I was going to raise that very point, Michael. Have you come across that in any of your other roles, the influence that social media is starting to have on the way these like election campaigns are run?
It's very easy now for someone to make a complaint. So if you're in a public office somewhere, or it doesn't even need to be public office, it could be corporates. I've also done some work in that area as well. It's very easy to someone to lodge a complaint, to do so anonymously. That's all. That's in the last 20 years, it's been pretty easy for anyone to get on and lodge an email create a fake email account and send off a spurious complaint. But the difference now is that they can amplify it by setting up false social media identities, and they put their complaint out. If they know how to manipulate users or plant it, seed it into the right populations of online users, then they can tremendously magnify the effect that they have. And they can largely still remain anonymous when they do so. So it's a real challenge for everyone to regulate that and to investigate it when it does occur.
Michael, looking forward in terms of your approach to your role here, what is your approach to getting to know the sector, find out who's who and what are the current issues? I imagine that's top of your list of things at the moment. Yeah,
it is. I started 7 weeks ago. I think on my 6th day, I was at the VLGA forum in Fitzroy in the town hall, and that was my first exposure to a large group of representatives from across the sector. Since then, I've done a number of other events, typically with IVAC or the Ombudsman's Office. Now, obviously, COVID has an effect here, but I would like to get out and meet people from across the sector and understand what the challenges are there. One thing I will say, and it's clear to me from the outset, and I did raise it at the VLGA forum, is that my job's not to get in your way in local government. Our job's to sort of try and help you to sort of push the good governance standards, and ideally to get in and identify things early and address them early before they arise to things that might necessitate either us or others potentially taking sort of some form of enforcement action. So I think it's we're not there to kick doors in and demand people hand material over. We've certainly got robust powers. We can certainly call people in for examinations and produce materials, but by and large, the LGI over the last decade of its existence has operated through cooperation and working closely with council to deal with problems. But I think dealing with them in a timely way will hopefully avoid those things arising. Unfortunately, we're seeing the sensational things that appear before IVAC. So if we can get in there early and help work through conflicts of interest and things like that arise, then hopefully, and make sure the council, and this is where we can, on our proactive side, looking at, we can choose to go in and look at various things that councils do, various systems, processes, just to see whether or not they've got due processes in place to deal with conflicts as and when they arise, and to give the guidance to councillors and council staff when necessary. So we can go in and look at that. And we also take, we do have that own motion ability, so we will take guidance if there's people in the sector who think there's a particular area of concern or thematic area that they think warrants the inspectorate having a look at. By all means, send it in and we'll consider it. Michael, I understand you've also been talking perhaps with counterparts in other states. I wonder, is that to learn what they're doing, or are they looking at what's happening in Victoria, or is it both? Both. It's at the moment, from the best that I can determine, we have one close counterpart, which is up in Queensland, the Office of the Independent Assessor. They've got a slightly different model there, more prosecution driven. They've also got, as you know, their councillors work on a different remuneration level. Yeah. So they've got, their dynamics are quite different. But we've also been approached again in the short term that I've been there by another state looking at the systems that we operate, and they're obviously comparing it with Queensland and others as to how this work is done. Even those states that don't have a dedicated local government inspectorate do have various elements of the function elsewhere. So they're making those decisions about whether to roll what they do into a dedicated body such as us, or maybe they're keeping elements in standalone components within other agencies. But yeah, certainly it's both. Like when you look at other agencies, and again from my prior experience, certainly at the World Bank and the United Nations, one of the key things we did was benchmark ourselves against others. But the difficulty with benchmarking yourself against others is, or measuring yourself, is we need to be able to measure ourselves against ourselves first. And if we don't have a case management system that allows us to sort of look at, well, how timely are we when we do these things? How effective are we? And again, a lot of it goes back to these IT related issues, but we're now part of justice, which is a big machine, and they've got lots of resources. And I've made it quite clear everywhere I go that that's one of my priorities, is to get that fixed as soon as possible. And I think the solutions now are a lot easier to find than they were a decade ago. Kathryn, final thoughts?
Look, just to welcome Michael's, I guess, willingness to work with other agencies and also the sector to identify issues before they occur, and also to provide that education. It might be just through sort of conversations like this or live panel discussions. I know that the VLGA certainly worked very closely with the previous inspector when he was there, and also his predecessor, and also we do with IBAC and the Ombudsman and also the Auditor General. And we've found that those partnerships are really important to bring the sector along with us and on a journey, as opposed to being standalone and seen only as regulatory agencies. So really keen to work with you and your team.
That's good to hear, and there'll certainly be plenty of opportunity for that. And once we get the restrictions lifted from Melbourne, hopefully we can get out and into the community and start meeting people face to face.
Michael, thank you for being so generous with your time. It's great to meet you. I do recommend the Integrity Matters newsletter to anyone who wants to know more about the work of the Inspectorate. There's quite a lot of information in the latest edition that has just recently come out. And thank you for being a part of VLGA Connect for the first time, and I hope certainly not the last. Good to meet you.
Likewise. Thank you very much, Chris and Kathryn. Cheers.
We've been speaking with Michael Stefanovic, the new Chief Municipal Inspector in the Local Government Inspectorate here in Victoria, and that's been a special edition of VLGA Connect.